Good afternoon. Well, good evening. Good evening, Facebook. My name is Tyra Watson, and I'm coming to you all from Southwest Funeral Home, and this is the Southwest Grief Corner. We are located at 7901 South Kaminsky Avenue in Chicago, one block west of 79th and Pulaski. Our website is www.southwest funeral home or Southwest Funeral and Cremation. Again, it's www.southwestfunerallandcremation.com. And of course, you can go onto our website to check out the available resources and services and things that we offer to you. But welcome back to the Grief Corner. It's been a while. I wanted to give you all a time to go through the videos that have already been published and had already been put out there. And so now here we are after just a little bit of a hiatus over the last couple months to check on you guys. So I am Tyra Watson, and of course, you know, I'm here on the Grief Corner to provide support to those who are grieving, those who have suffered loss, those who are trying to help those who have suffered loss, those that are trying to be a support system to their family and friends as they endure their grief journey. So most funeral homes, actually it's less than 3% of funeral homes that actually have some type of grief support program in place to help their families. This is still very important to us. So we like to be part of that 3% that continues to reach out to those who may need this type of assistance. One thing that we do know is that grief changes things, and normally when they speak about a grief program and they talk about the follow-up that should be done, they advise that it should be at least a year that we are providing the grief support to those who are trying to make the adjustment in their transitions, in the attachments of those that they have lost. And so it actually has been a year now that we started this platform. We started the platform May of last year, right before Mother's Day, actually. So here we are a year later, and I thought that, you know, definitely for sure a great time to see and check on my people who a year ago had just come through our way, and we started to provide the grief support to you to see how you all are doing. This is a year later, and one thing that we know is that a year is not really a lot of time. When we're looking from here to a year from now, it seems like it's so far away. But for those who started this and endured losses a year ago, and now here you are a year out, God bless you for continuing to endure. God bless you for continuing to make the best attempt that you could every day from last year till now to keep going in spite of your loss. I can't speak to how you all may be feeling, but what I do know is that you are probably not in the same place right now this year as you were in last year. And so while we speak about how a year can be seem like a lot of time, it's really not. And so much with COVID and violence, even in Chicago, so much has happened in the last year. But while you reflect back now and you look back at how far you've come over the last year, one thing that you will admit in most cases is that you're not in the same place that you were in this time last year. And so for those who are currently suffering new losses, those who just lost their mother right before Mother's Day, now right after Mother's Day, those who just, you know, had deaths that didn't have anything to do with Mother or Mother's Day, but those that right now are suffering and trying to adjust to the losses, I'm just here to encourage you as you have just started your grief journey, to let you know that it is exactly that. when we lose someone that we've been attached to and we're trying to adjust to life without them, especially if you weren't expecting them to pass away, especially if they weren't sick and everything was good, such has been the case with so many that have passed away, and even a lot of COVID circumstances, you just were not expecting to lose this person. And so it's been traumatic. And with it being a new loss, it's still traumatic. And when I say new loss, it could have been last month, it could have been 2 months ago, still very fresh. Even as we speak about how in the course of a year, so much can change. But if we're talking about someone that's close to us, a year is no time at all. So the wound, even for those who may have joined the platform or suffered the loss a year ago, and you might not be further than you were last year. Truly, you may be continuing to move forward, but maybe the pain that you are feeling is still the type of pain that's as gut-wrenching as it was last year. But that's why I want to remind you that your grief journey is exactly that. It isn't a journey. And so whether it started a year ago or whether it's fresh, I want you to be encouraged to know that it's going to still yet take time. When we opened the platform up last year for the Southwest Grief Corner, and thank you all for joining us and continuing to allow us to render some portion of support to you. But when we started the Grief Corner, speaking about the 5 stages of death. And it's now also a good time to remind you all about the 5 stages of death. The 5 stages of death was basically a theory imposed to help those who had been told that they were dying, how to kind of break down the things that they might be going through. And it transposed over into also a theory that affects those who have suffered loss. So whether I find out I'm dying or whether I find out, that I've just lost someone, these 5 stages are pretty much in sync for the person who is on either side of the track. So the 5 stages of grief just help us to try and place where we are, especially if, like I mentioned, the death was not expected. So it's all of a sudden you find this out. What do I do? How am I even supposed to start to process this? And so the 5 stages of grief is a simple attempt to compartmentalize your feelings or categorize the feelings that you might be having at any particular point. So the 5 stages of grief as we know them are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So if I had a new death or a traumatic death and I'm still trying to grasp my head around it, I might just simply still be in the denial stage of grief, not willing and ready and able to accept that it has happened, or even for those that may find that they're terminal, to accept the prognosis that the doctor has given me. For those that are in the anger stage of grief, the anger stage of grief is simply one where, exactly as it sounds, where you're upset. You could be upset with God. You could be upset with the person who passed. You can be upset with those around you for other reasons that are not identifiable, or rather that you don't want to speak about. And so the death causes you anger. If a person has been killed and you have not had any justice for the loss of life, we know that there's a lot of racial disparity right now. There's a lot of racial tension. We just this week passed the anniversary of the 1-year anniversary. So speaking about things that happened within a year, we just passed the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's death. Even with his family still, trying to advocate, still hurting. And so when we look at the anger portion, it could be that maybe you have not been served justice, or your family member has not been served justice in the death. And so, of course, that will cause you to be angry, as you should, and that's okay. Bargaining, that stage of grief is about the going back and forth, forward and backward, things that you couldn't change. I wish I could have, or I should have, if only things had been, or if only I had. And we remember, and if you have not seen these videos, they're still here. They're posted on our website. They are also here on our Facebook page. You can still go back and view each one of these areas of the 5 stages of grief, where I talk just a little bit more about each one, and also provide some recommendations to you if you are in that particular stage of grief. So when we speak about bargaining and the bargaining stage of grief, that was just the going back and forth. But one of the most important things to remember, if in fact you are in the bargaining stage of grief, which means that maybe you might be a little further along from the date of loss, or maybe you're going back and forth, but just being able to release yourself from the guilt and the pain that you might be feeling because of what you did not do or what you could not change. Then we also have the depression stage of the 5 stages of grief. Depression is kind of like anger. It is what it is. But the thing about being depressed when we lose someone, though this is very natural, we want to watch those that we are witnessing kind of on a downward turn. And when I started speaking to you guys a few minutes ago, I mentioned that most of you all are probably further along than you were this time last year. But for those that may find that they're still in the same place as they were last year, as far as the pain, as far as not being able to kind of on a one day at a time start to move forward in adjusting to life with this person, these are the people that we want to watch out for. We want to give people time to heal, and everybody's grief journey is different. No one person processes death the same, and even if in fact all family members are suffering the loss and the pain of loss from a family member, each one of those relationships are different. So even if we're in the same family and we've experienced the loss of this loved one that sat at our dinner table, that took road trips with us, that talked on phone with us, that visited our homes, even though we all had kind of the same relationship, the relationships are not exactly the same. And so as we are interceding for each other as a support system, when we lose someone, we want to make sure that we keep an eye on those persons that seem not to be making any progress. So if you have a sister, a cousin, a mother, a father, a friend even, and you realize that they still are in the same place they were in as far as the darkness of it, as far as the hurt of it, the pain of it, that they're not having any good days, and they're not having any good days consecutively. And now we are 6 months out. Now we are a year out. We want to be keeping our eye on them, because the thing that we're concerned about in depression is suicide. One thing that people overlook is that suicide is serious and suicide is very real. So we want to make sure that those people that we're trying to help through their losses, that if they're not making any progress, remember it's their own grief journey. So everyone is different. And even in the same family, we may not process it the same. But if I recognize that there is a friend or a family member and they're not making any progress, and we're months down the line, while I may have been trying to give them room to deal with things and get respect in their space, if you will, now we get to a point where we got to be really, really careful, because we don't want them to slip so far into depression that suicide becomes an issue, and then now those that are left behind are bargaining, feeling like, what if I had stepped in? What if I had helped? I knew that there was something going on, but I just wanted to respect their space, and I didn't want to, and now they're gone. And so, definitely keep our eye out for those who are depressed. If it is you that has suffered the loss, and you're still experiencing dark days. You're not able to get back to work at some point or back to school at some point. You're not taking care of personal hygiene, taking care of the home. Again, initially these things will be normal, but at some point, you should feel like, okay, today's a nice day. Today I do have a reason to smile. Today is not a day where I'm crying. But if every day is filled with tears and every day is filled with darkness, then please reach out and speak to someone. You can always call me here. The number here is 773-424-3151. Again, the phone number here is 773-424-3151. You can always call me here, and I'm going to either speak with you, lend my ear to you, or I'm going to put you in the hands of someone who can take you on a more personal level and spend more time with you to help you. So let's keep our eyes out for those who are suffering loss, especially if it was a year ago and we still find that they're in the same place. We want to be cautious. Sometimes you got to talk to someone. And when I say talk to someone, there's a stigma on Black people that, we don't talk to therapists, or, we don't want to take medication. But it's okay. And sometimes you might need to speak with the pastor, but your family and your friends are your greatest resource. Continue to lean on your family and your friends. But remember that they too are grieving if you guys are connected to that loss. And so sometimes it's hard to help someone when in fact you're hurting too. And so that's why we have the professionals, we have the counselors. That's why we offer the grief support, and also we offer grief support group. So please reach out and allow us to be a neutral party and a caring party for you if you're experiencing that. And be watchful and be careful that at some point along your grief journey that you are able to get back to what is a new, or what, I don't want to say get back to, but get to a new norm where you are functional in life without. And if you're not getting there, if you don't have any days where you can smile, then definitely make sure you reach out to someone, because we don't want suicide to become a conversation for your loved ones. And then the last stage of grief was acceptance. Acceptance is once we do finally get to a place where we have accepted that we are moving on without this person, that we are accepting of the death, accepting of the loss. And maybe in that, it may not always be that you accept the circumstances. It may not always be that you accept the death, but you've come to a place of functionality where you are getting back to living life again. Again, that might look different. One thing about death, and some of you all, especially if you have suffered loss in this last year, or even in the last 2 years, you'll notice that a lot of things have changed. It's kind of like the weather today. The last week or so, last couple of weeks, we've had really great weather. And everyone, I think, had put their winter coats up. Everyone had turned their heat off. Everyone had pulled out their sandals and put up the sweatshirts and put up the hoodies. And then here comes yesterday starting to change things. But without warning, today, this is the weather that we have. And death is like that. It comes unexpectedly, and sometimes there is a warning sign, like the weather forecast. Sometimes it gives us a clue and sometimes it doesn't. But if it does and I can prepare, then a lot of times I can accept things more easily. But one thing about death, just like the weather, we cannot change it. So once I get to a place of acceptance of the loss, it's not to say that I'm happy about the fact that it's raining today. It's not to say that I'm happy about the fact that I lost my sister, I lost my brother, I lost my son, I lost my daughter, I lost my mother, I lost my father, I lost my best friend. It's not to say that I'm happy about that. That's not it at all. But it is to say that I've come to accept that I have to keep living life without them. Just like today, We had to accept that you needed to pull maybe one of your winter coats back out. We had to accept that you needed a closed-toe shoe on today. We have to accept that we need on jeans today. And so are we happy about it? No. But we just have to accept the weather for what it is. And that, I think, is just, it's a good analogy. It wasn't my intent, but it is a good analogy how we have to accept today's weather the same way at some point we accept a death. Not that we're happy about it, but it's just I've started to adjust. And if you have someone that's come to a place of acceptance, celebrate with them. Celebrate the fact that they're in a functional state again. Celebrate that maybe they've moved to a new city. Sometimes death brings about changes. Life is not the same after death. And so if death and acceptance in death has brought you to make those type of changes in your life, relocation, new love interest, and things like that, support and celebrate those who've come to a place of acceptance, because we want to encourage them as their village of supporters moving past loss. We want to encourage them in all the things that are good, and because it is their grief journey and not yours, then whatever it takes to help them get through it so that they're not stuck in that deep depression, then we want to support that. And so with that being said, as I mentioned, you guys can go back and look at the 5 stages of grief, those videos that were done last May, actually. And now we are coming back full circle where I want to bring that to your attention, because it doesn't matter if the death was last year, a year ago, a year prior to that, or if it's a year from now. And God, may He continue to bless and keep all of you and your families. But these 5 stages of grief, they will not change. And so you can kind of look at them in order to identify where you may be in your grief journey as it relates to new death, or trying to still work through these months later, or even these years later. We still celebrate, or commemorate, I should say, not celebrate, but we still commemorate the lives that were lost on September 11th because of the World Trade incident, because of the incident that took so many, changed so many. We're 20 years out. And we're still commemorating that. We're still remembering that. And now we're going into Memorial Day weekend. As we go into Memorial Day weekend, and we think of all of those that have lost their lives through service, whether they lost their life in Desert Storm, or World War II, or the Korean War, or Pearl Harbor, or the Vietnam War, or the Afghanistan War, the Iraqi War. All of these things, there were people who served, and these have all been years ago, but there are still family members that they left behind. So as we go into Memorial Day, we want to think about them and remember that just because it's been 5 years even, 6 years even, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, since the loss of the person that you love, that's still affecting you in some shape, form, or fashion. Sure, you may have gotten to acceptance, but it doesn't mean that you don't have some bad days sometimes. Sure, you may have come to a place where you've been able to kind of keep living your life, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt sometimes. And sure, you may have been now in a place where you're smiling more, but it still doesn't mean that there's not a hole in your heart for where that person took residence at. So just like we can still commemorate, I say celebrate, that's not it, but as we still commemorate the lives that were lost at 9/11, as we still commemorate the lives through Memorial Day, on a weekend where sometimes people are just barbecuing and taking advantage of the 3-day weekend, who forget why this weekend is. We don't forget. So when I lose someone, just because it's been years, please don't overlook the fact that even though that person may have lost someone some years ago, that even though they're smiling now, even though they've accepted it now, let's not overlook that sometimes they can also still be in pain. For those of you who that is the case, that it's been some years now, and you are still experiencing pain from your loss, that's okay. As I stated, grief is a journey. and you started when the loss begins, who knows when it ends? Grief is highly individual. Grief is also subjective, in the sense of where this person is. So when we look at the 5 stages of grief, people go back and forth between those stages. It helps us to try and put death and what we're feeling in death in some type of order. But the fact is, those stages don't necessarily, those moments of the 5 stages of grief, they don't happen in that particular order. And it doesn't mean to say that you may not go back and forth between those various stages of grief as you continue to try and move forward. And it could take years. So for those that are recently suffering loss, I just wanted to come on and encourage you and remind you to be patient with yourself. To remind you that Southwest is still here to provide grief support to you, whether it be individual, whether it be through group, and also to provide you resources that will assist you as you continue to adjust to life without those that you loved whom we've lost. And we've had so much to happen and so much loss in the last year that it truly is heartbreaking. And so I'm totally in tune with those that are suffering loss, those that are hurting. So please allow us to be a resource to you. And if not us, allow the resources that we have for you to be a resource to you. God bless you guys as you all continue to go into your Memorial Day weekend. Again, be safe. As you might have suffered loss, and Memorial Day is to commemorate the lives of those who lost their life serving this country. It's also an okay time to celebrate the lives of those that you lost. A lot of people go to the cemetery on Memorial Day weekend, Memorial Day. So this is probably one of those weekends. And if this is the first Memorial Day without your loved one, this is one of the first holidays without your loved one, and you're starting to try to figure out how to adjust, you can create new traditions, and as those new traditions may some form of commemoration to your loved one, you can also incorporate new traditions as a way of helping you to feel better. So just remember that as you're moving on, that also it doesn't mean that you're letting your loved one go. Release them, yes, but releasing your love from them, no, not so much. We will always love those who we lost. We just love them differently, and we love them from a different place. So be encouraged to continue to love them, continue to allow their spirits to resonate with you, continue to celebrate and commemorate their lives how you and your family so choose to, and also continue to remember that your family and your friends are your greatest support in death and in loss. But if you don't have that, or if you don't feel like you can speak with them, again, you can always talk to us. I am Tyra Watson, and this is the Southwest Grief Corner. You can go to our website at www.southwestfunerallandcremation.com. Again, that is www.southwestfunerallandcremation.com. You'll go under the Grief Support tab, and there are resources provided there to you all for counseling. And these are all resources that we are familiar with, that we know, not just something that we Googled. So we trust them with you. And we believe and are confident that they can care for you one-on-one and talk you through or help you in whatever ways are necessary. And as well, all of the grief support videos are available to you so that you can go back and watch them. We have some one grief support resource for widowers and divorcees even, because when we talk about loss is not always in death. Sometimes we go through changes in life. People have lost a lot of things through COVID. So loss is not always in death, but when you suffer loss, you can still go through the 5 stages of grief because you are grieved over the thing that you lost. So when we go through divorce, sometimes people, they are grieved in the loss of their marriage. So there's even a support group on there for widowers and divorcees. And so please check out those resources, allow them to be a help to you. And again, you can contact us anytime if you need anything. We're praying for you, we're thinking about you, and God bless you. Y'all have a good one.